Hello YouTube, and this is Thomas Judge back once again with another episode in my ongoing DC Rebirth guide or series of guides. And today is the second part of the DC Rebirth guide to out of continuity DC Rebirth comics. I've been doing a series of these guides one by one. I've done Deceased, I've done Black Label and so on. They've all kind of been one and done videos covering anything between kind of like 40 to 100 odd issues. This is the first one of the bullet points on these 8 sections here that you can see, which is actually going to go into a two-parter, and this is the second part. We're diving straight into out of continuity. As I mentioned in the last video, this thumbnail is actually orchestrated in a particular way that segments out of continuity comics into 3 sections, but we've already covered most of the ones on the right. We're now going to finish off all the rest of them today. That's it, enough padding. With no further ado, let's dive right into it. The last thing we looked at was Commandy, which means that the next one we're going to look at is Mystik U, which is a series from 2018. Now, this was a 3-issue miniseries written by Elisa Whitney with art from Mike Norton. Now, the cover art alone made me think immediately, oh, this is like a DC for kids kind of series. That's what it looked like to me. I thought this would be DC Zoom or DC Inc. No, it turns out this is just straight up DC. That said, this 3-issue miniseries stars like an alternate universe version of Zatanna. Basically, long story short, she sees her dad disappear, so Zatara disappears, and then she ends up getting whisked off to like a magic school, like a mystic university. So, hence the name Mystik U. It's pretty decent, it's pretty fun. It does feel kind of kid focused, but more importantly, it is just standard DC labeling. It's part of DC Rebirth and it's definitely out of continuity. Moving on, next we have Nightwing New Order. So this is the cover of it. This was published from 2017 to 2018. 6-issue miniseries written by Kyle Higgins. For those of you that know your Nightwing, Kyle Higgins is a long-standing Nightwing writer with art by Trevor McCarthy. It's set in the future. It's set in roughly 2040 and absolutely out of continuity. I will say this, it is a damn good story. Damn good. Highly recommended it. I really enjoyed reading this. Next up is Odyssey of the Amazons. This came out in 2017. It's 6 issues, but each of the issues is like double the length of a normal issue. So the actual trade collection for this feels quite meaty, as if it was a 12-issue maxi series. So it's got these 6 double-sided issues. It was written by Kevin Grievous. So if you don't know who Kevin Grievous is, he does a lot of work in Hollywood. I guess for me, he's most famous as being the dude in the Underworld movies who plays one of the massive werewolves. He's this huge black guy, very ripped, very muscular, really distinctive, deep voice. But he's actually an awesome writer, and he's done a whole load of comics, which I would highly recommend. So for me, there's kind of a badge of quality that is written by Kevin Grievous. The art's by a guy called Ryan Benjamin, who's very competent. And what this series does, it basically stars a team of Amazons led by Hesia. So Diana, or Wonder Woman, she's not in it at all. It's actually set years before the birth of Diana, where a load of Amazons basically set off on this worldwide quest to try and find other Amazons. The journey basically goes a little bit south. Some of them get caught by storm giants, so Norse mythology, for those of you that have played God of War Ragnarok. And essentially Hesia has to keep them together and sort it all out and essentially succeed and so on. I didn't enjoy this. But if you're an Amazon fan, it's well worth reading. It's definitely out of continuity. I guess there's nothing in it specifically which means this couldn't have been part of the overarching continuity of normal Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, that sort of stuff, just set well earlier. But it was set literally hundreds of thousands of years earlier. So, yeah, this is frankly just out of continuity. Next up, we have Plastic Man. So this was released from 2018 to 2019. It's a 6-issue miniseries written by Gail Simone. Gail Simone is, in my mind, quite hit and miss. When she's hit, she's amazing. And obviously, Plastic Man is one of my favourite characters, so I was really looking forward to this. It's got art from Adriana Mello, who does a very, very good, very competent job. The story itself is very, unfortunately, up and down. It has got a few bits in it and a few pages in it, which are just excellent. And are kind of like viral on Twitter in terms of like, hey, this is how much of a badass Plastic Man is, or this is how good Simone is at writing him. But that said, it doesn't really do anything for me, other than those kind of like cool little moments. The series itself ends on a cliffhanger, but what I will say is that the cliffhanger it ends on at the end of issue 6 is never followed up, and the next Plastic Man series, which comes out like 3 or 4 years later, is totally unrelated. So unfortunately, it's a one and done, out of continuity Plastic Man story. I think originally they kind of pitched this as, oh, this is Plastic Man returning to the DCU after the events of Dark Knight Metal, because spoiler warning, like, he's a character in that. But no, this is just its own one and done out of continuity thing. Do not worry about it. Next is this, which is really easy to overlook. It's the Swamp Thing Winter Special 2018 one-shot. It is just a one-shot. It's composed of 2 stories, and the first one is actually, and I am slightly grudging to admit this, it's an excellent one-shot written by Tom King. I know Tom King can be divisive. I also find him a bit divisive. But it's written by him and drawn by his longtime collaborator Jason Fabok. And then the second story in this special is actually the final story that Len Wein ever wrote. If you know who Len Wein is, he's basically the person who came up with Swamp Thing in the first place. The story itself is, well, he wrote it, but he never actually wrote the actual dialogue for it. So rather than getting someone else in to write the dialogue, we decided it was just going to be illustrated by Kelly Jones, who's a long-standing collaborator with Len Wein, and then it was going to be printed without text. Now, the script with the overarching plot is also published after the issue as part of the special as well. Len Wein, a little bit like Neil Adams, who we talked about in the last video, so the Out of Continuity Part 1. Len Wein is kind of an icon and a landmark in comics in terms of influencing so many things and shaping the landscape. I'm, again, not a massive fan of him, I'm afraid, but what I would say is if you are, then this is the last story he ever wrote, and it's worth checking out. Then we have Titans Burning Rage. This was from 2019 to 2020. This is one of those weird ones that was originally published as a series of Giant issues. So this was published in Teen Titans Giant 1-7 and then Titans Giant 1-7, which are American exclusive things. These are like oversized, like physically they're taller and wider and deeper than normal comics, and they're only published, I think, at Walmart, I want to say. If there's any Americans watching this, then put me right, let me know. But I do know there's a whole series of these, like Wonder Woman Giant, Batman Giant, Teen Titans Giant, that are Walmart exclusives. Anyway, this was written by Dan Jurgens with art by Scott Eaton and is definitely out of continuity, not part of normal DC Rebirth. And then the final one that we have there is Vigilante Southland, which is a series that was published from 2016 to 17. It was meant to be a 6-issue series. The first 3 issues were published physically, and then the series was so unpopular that the rest were just cancelled, and the whole thing was just released as a single trade paperback for 6 issues. This is not superhero related whatsoever. It's a reboot of an existing DC character instead. It's gritty, it's real, it's street scale, it's political. It has the words fuck and the N-word in there, so it's slightly astonishing that it exists. N-word with a soft R rather than a hard R, but either way, it's astonishing this was published. It was written by Gary Phillips with art from Elena Casagrande, and it's worth reading, but whether or not you like it, I don't know. I was kind of on the fence by the end of it. Okay, so now we're looking at the thumbnail. We've covered everything on the right-hand side, which is the majority. However, as you can see, there's 2 that are distinct at the bottom, and then there's the Green Lantern stuff distinct on the left. And I want to talk about those now, and I'm going to explain why those are kind of segmented apart. So we've got 3 different grouping of out-of-continuity comics. So the first thing I want to talk about, the Green Lantern ones on the left. Now, the thing about these is they are arguably in continuity, because this series replaced both Green Lanterns from the DC Rebirth era, which we'll cover in DC Rebirth, and it also superseded Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, which was also published at the same time. So the fact that this supersedes those is often considered to be in continuity, and then it was succeeded later on by the new Green Lantern series, Green Lantern Volume with the big V, from the Infinite Frontier era. But as we talk through it, I'm going to explain why I don't feel personally this is in continuity. And if you're reading DC Rebirth, I would not recommend you read this as part of the mainstream continuity. More on that in a second, but this was written by Grant Morrison. I know Grant Morrison has some people who are just rabid fans of them. And if you are a big fan and you're one of the people that just loves everything Morrison writes, then obviously pick this up. This story is very Morrison-y and it's drawn by Liam Sharp. It's actually split into seasons. So you've got season 1, season 2, which I'll be honest, I kind of raised an eyebrow about because that's exactly what I'm doing with my prose novels, No God of Kings. The first season is the first 9 volumes, of which obviously I've only written 4. But clearly, you know, Morrison decided to do a similar sort of thing. So we've got season 1, which is this trade here, which is volume 1, Intergalactic Lawman. that collects issues 1 to 6. Now, this does make it feel a bit like it's in continuity because issue 1 references something that happens at the end of Dark Knight Metal to do with the Source Wall. I'm trying to avoid spoilers, right? So I can see why people think it's in continuity. It's followed by Volume 2, so volume with a small v. That's The Day the Stars Fell. And this trade paperback collects issues 7 to 12, and then the standalone issue, Annual 1, at the end of it. Now, Annual 1 features the Jordan family member, someone called Airwave, which is kind of like new to me. I was like, who is this person? And then also, just generally throughout both of these volumes, so the whole of season 1, the Guardians of the Universe like make a couple of subtle references to some things happening that are kind of DC Rebirth related. Again, I'm going to avoid spoilers, but they talk about like external interference and someone meddling with the Earth's timeline and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, again, it does make you think, oh, maybe this is DC Rebirth related. It's worth noting that issue 11 of this volume marks the first appearance of Earth 53, who were actually first noted in Dark Knight Rising: The Wild Hunt, which is a one-shot we'll talk about in the main DC Rebirth continuity. Now, there's not much known about Earth 53, because it's not shown on the Grant Morrison multiverse map from the multiverse series. But like I say, it is mentioned there, it is then mentioned here, and eventually will be mentioned in the Dark Crisis event of Infinite Frontier. But hey, that's just a little bit of trivia. That doesn't make me feel that this necessarily needs to be viewed as in continuity. Anyway, the series is then followed by 3 issues of something called Green Lantern Black Stars that came out in 2020, which is very, very multiverse heavy, as in fact is all the series from this point on. And it's because it's so multiverse heavy, it basically starts to just fall out of continuity in my perception of it. So like I say, you have the 3 issues of Green Lantern Black Stars, and then that goes into Green Lantern Season 2, which was published from 2020 to 2021, same creative team. And you've got Volume 1, which has got this cover here. Now, this volume doesn't have a name. It's just called Volume 1. And it collects Black Stars 1 to 3, and then Green Lantern Season 2, issues 1 to 6. Next up, we then have volume 2 of this, which is called Ultra War. And this is the final volume with a small v, of Green Lantern Season 2. And that collects issues 7 to 12. Like I say, technically, this little Morrison triumvirate, Season 1, the Black Stars trilogy, and then Season 2, is meant to be canonical. But the tone and the art feel jarringly out of place. And in addition, it has such a focus on other realities that it eventually, to me, just feels like it's its own out-of-continuity thing. Now listen, after this maxi series, Green Lantern Season 2, DC resumes publication of a more normal, conventional Green Lantern title with Green Lantern Volume 6, volume with a big V. That's in June 2021, so pure Infinite Frontier era, and it introduces characters from Far Sector and Young Justice, so it's back in normal continuity. But this right here, this is not normal continuity as far as I'm concerned. It's worth mentioning, just for the sake of completeness, that you'll notice on the thumbnail there's this one issue here, the Green Lantern 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. This is a one-shot that came out in 2020, and it's an anthology of 10 stories by 10 writers. It's out of continuity, or rather it's not slavishly in continuity. I've stuck it here because I thought I might as well stick it with the other Green Lantern stuff. It kind of felt in keeping with that. It's worth noting at this point, and I will note it in future videos when it comes up, now, there were several 80th anniversary 100-page super spectaculars during the Rebirth era. That was for Green Lantern, which you can obviously see, but also for Joker, for Robin, and for Catwoman. They all fit in different places. For example, the Catwoman one is collected in with Tom King's Batman, so we'll cover it later. But for the Green Lantern one, it just felt like it didn't fit in anywhere else, so I just shoved it in here. It's not in continuity, and hasn't got anything that's kind of relevant or necessary for the mainstream Green Lantern. So there we are. That's everything on the left-hand side. We've done everything on the right. We've now done everything on the left. And that finally leaves us just with the 2 at the bottom. Now, the reason I put these in here is because they are arguably, again, not out of continuity. But I'll explain those and my rationale for that in just a moment. So to start with, we've got Supergirl Being Super. This came out in 2017. It's a 4-issue series written by Mariko Tamaki with art by Joelle Jones. This was originally just published as straight up vanilla DC, standard DC. However, once the DC graphics novel for young adults imprint was created, which we have talked about a few videos ago when I talked about things I'm not including, that imprint then pulled Supergirl under that umbrella. And so Supergirl being Super, if you buy it now, has the branding saying DC graphic novels for young adults. So technically, I guess I shouldn't include it, but I'm going to, because originally it was vanilla DC, and it is fucking great. It is probably the best thing out of this whole out of continuity era, and I just love it. Yes, I'm a massive Supergirl fan, so that's one reason why. But I do think it's fantastic. If you're going to pick up anything from here, pick up Supergirl, and you're going to pick up two things, pick up Supergirl and then pick up Nightwing. Those are the two best out of continuity bits of the Rebirth era, bar none. So that's why Supergirl's here. The next one I'm going to talk about, this is the final one, is Superman Smashes the Klan, which was released from 2019 to 2020 as a 3-issue series. Written by Jean Luen Yang, who is a American-born East Asian, and with art from someone called Gurihiru. I have no idea who that person is or what they're about. I am going to completely put my hand up and acknowledge this has always been a DC Zoom comic, and therefore it's published as DC Zoom, which is aimed at kids, and it is now under the DC graphic novels for young adults imprint. And that's fine, that's fair enough. Technically, this shouldn't be included at all. I literally did a video a week or two ago explaining that I wasn't going to include DC Zoom and DC Ink. And unlike Supergirl, where originally this was like a vanilla thing in Supergirl, and then it became DC young adults, Superman Smashes the Klan has always been young adults or DC Zoom. Therefore, by my own rules, it should be exempt. But I'm not going to exempt it. I'm going to put it here because, frankly, it is great. It is a good story. It's well worth reading, and it's actually like a really important thing to read, I think. I don't want to get on like a political soapbox, and I've already said which my favourite ones of this era are, which is Supergirl and Nightwing. I don't own Superman Smashes the Klan. I read it from my local library. But I think it is an important read. It's a good read. Everyone that's interested in DC Comics in this era should read it, whether or not you're reading DC Zoom or not. It's obviously out of continuity and not canonical, but it is such an interesting, such an important historical landmark that it's something that I'm going to say, listen, I would recommend it to you. And I appreciate that's subjective, the same way that already in the last two videos I've essentially dismissed Len Wein and Neil Adams, who people view as huge landmark authors, and now I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying that this thing, Superman Smashes the Klan, is a landmark you should read. But of course, that's just my opinion. You're welcome to ignore me. That's why I've included it here. Okay, panning back, here we have the entire thumbnail with every single front cover from every single story that I've talked about. So we have on the right, standard out of continuity. On the left, Green Lantern. If you think this is in continuity, I would argue it's not. And at the bottom, you've got a couple of token DC Zoom ones, which I think you should definitely consider. So that is our second DC out of continuity video, looking at the overarching list. That's another bullet point covered off. So again, as I say for each of these videos, I know this isn't necessarily the bit that you're looking forward to and super excited about, but it's really important to cover these off because we are going to be whittling down and honing down, trimming off all the fat and getting down to the lean muscle of DC Rebirth, which obviously we are now one step closer to. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. As always, please comment, please like, please subscribe, please let me know your thoughts. As always, support the channel. As I mentioned before, I'm an author. I've written No Gods or Kings, which has its own website. You can check that out. The link is in the description. And obviously, you can buy it off Amazon, and that is hugely, hugely appreciated. Buy it. Leave me a 5-star review. Leave me a little quick blurb saying it's amazing. Even if you haven't read it, leave me a blurb saying it's amazing. Thank you so much. And as always, until next time, when we'll be covering something slightly different, stay classy.